Don't worry, guys. This is the last time I'm going to be talking about Sonic Movie 3. Publicly, at least. But yeah, I watched Sonic Movie 3, and honestly, I didn't think I'd say this, but Eggman is truly one of the most human characters in the entire franchise. And the reason I can confidently say that is just because of how much Jim Carrey really put into this character. Obviously, we know him as like the very silly, goofy guy. Like, everyone just associates him with being silly. But I feel like despite that, even with all the silliness that he adds to Eggman's character as a whole, in both the first two movies, and obviously now with this third one that came out, it feels like they really elevated Eggman's character as a whole. And what I mean by that is, obviously most casual Sonic fans know that Eggman essentially causes his own downfalls. Like, the reason why his plans always fail when he's up against Sonic is because he's way too egotistical. He really believes that like everything he does is flawless, that everything he wants to achieve is pure perfection. And obviously, as most people know, when you live with that kind of mindset that everything you need to do and everything that you currently do and will do is nothing but perfection, you're really just setting yourself up for failure. And that's why time and time again we see Eggman failing with every scheme. He always underestimates Sonic and his friends, and that is what causes him to fail. Now, obviously with Sonic Movie 3, we see that he meets his grandfather, who's somehow still alive. One of the weird things that they added to the movie, but that's besides the point. It doesn't really matter. Regardless, we see that almost immediately, like in almost a comedic fashion, we see that it melts his icy cold heart when he realizes there's somebody who's like me, somebody who gets him. Because as they briefly establish in the first movie, we see that Eggman, Ivo Robotnik, we come to an understanding that he used to get bullied and he was outcasted. The government didn't want him to get involved when it came to hunting down who the hell this blue hedgehog or this blue creature thing was. And right off the bat, we can see just how eccentric he is and just how not normal he is. And obviously it becomes more evident that he is outcasted and shunned for how he acts, how he is, how he behaves. But I think even with all that, there's a certain aspect that I feel like a lot of Sonic fans, or Sonic tubers, whatever you want to call them, don't necessarily talk about all the time. And I'm not saying I'm unique for bringing this up, because again, as I mentioned, a lot of hardcore Sonic fans know that Eggman's backstory is honestly a lot more tragic than it seems. And for those unaware, when Eggman was growing up, he really had no one but himself. In one of the Egg voice memos in Sonic Frontiers, we learned that Eggman knew very little about even his own cousin, his distant cousin Maria, because, well, she passed. And even then he just never got to know who she was as a person. And yet, even though she was long gone, his entire family spent so much time thinking of her and giving all of their attention to her. And as he says, to someone who was gone, someone who has been dead for a while now, instead of a person who was right there in front of them. Eggman was a genius. Anyone could see that from the beginning, and yet he remained unnoticed. And he spent his entire life being shoved aside for somebody who wasn't there anymore. And honestly, that kind of treatment can really do a number on somebody. It just creates all of these bitter emotions, and it just festers. The longer these feelings linger within somebody, it only just makes you more and more bitter. And then spoilers, I don't know if I need to say that, but spoilers for the ending of Sonic Movie 3. Or I guess the final act of the movie. We have Robotnik, who finally realizes why Gerald had this Eclipse cannon set to Earth. He realizes what's actually going on and how his deranged grandfather wants to kill everybody. He wants to kill all humanity, and including himself, for the sake of getting revenge, because I guess to him, that's what Maria would have wanted. Eggman's confused. He doesn't understand. He's like, whoa, why are we trying to get rid of humanity? Why don't we just rule? So everything is in our name, in our order, the way we want it. But Gerald says no, like, why would you want to go and live amongst those people? Why would you want to go rule those people who don't care for you? Nobody down there cares about you. You know, it becomes very sad really quick when Eggman turns to his own grandfather. He's like, but what about us? Like, I have you now. We're family. And Gerald tells him, oh, Ivo, you're no Maria. And that just further solidifies that to his family, he's never gonna be Maria. He's never gonna be the light of their life, the wind in their sails, whatever you want to call it. He's always just going to be a nobody. And yet, it took him so long to realize that he had somebody who thought he was somebody, who believed in him, who loved and appreciated him for who he was. And yet, like most things in life, when we're consumed by our own hubris, our own ego and pride, greed, whatever other vices, right? We tend to overlook and forget those who do care for us. And that's why at the end, when Eggman sacrifices himself for humanity, it doesn't necessarily make up for everything he's done, obviously, but it does make him human. It just proves how Sonic Movie 3 humanized Eggman